How well does your company blend strategic business acumen and human-focused leadership that results in a holistic business transformation? My guest on this episode of the Work Positive podcast dives deeply into the human elements that directly impact business performance. His innovative management tool, 30-Second Leadership, has revolutionized the way businesses enhance employee mindset, skill set, and overall performance. He gives presentations to companies, maybe you've heard of them, McDonald's, U.S. Air Force, Allstate, KFC, Great Clips, Remax, Salesforce, Columbia Sportswear, and countless others. He's the author of The Wealthy Franchisee, Game-Changing Steps to Becoming a Thriving Franchise Superstar, and his newest book is Stop the Shift Show. Turn your struggling hourly workers into a top-performing team. So if you're looking to transform your company with a balanced strategy, listen up, lean in, and love your work on this episode of the Work Positive Podcast.
Welcome to the Work Positive Podcast with your host, executive coach, and culture architect, Dr. Joey Fawcett. Discover strategies and tactics that work positive as Dr. Joey talks with industry leaders who create a positive work culture that attracts top talent and reduces team turnover. Discover how you can create a work-positive culture that increases productivity and profits. Here's your host, Dr. Joey.
Work Positive Nation, you got 30 seconds? Because you're going to learn today how to do some transformational leadership from the expert, the guru. The man is here on the Work Positive Podcast, Scott Greenberg. Scott, welcome to the Work Positive Podcast, my friend.
Thank you. I don't know if I'm an expert or a guru, but I'm a man. So you're at least 1/3 correct.
1 out of 3 ain't bad.
Not bad.
I think the song was 2 out of 3, though, wasn't it? Anyway, well, in my mind, you're all 3. Work Positive Nation, you're going to love this conversation with Scott. Scott, I love food. I'm a fan of franchises. You had an edible arrangements franchise for like 10 years. How did you keep from eating up all your profits?
Who said I didn't eat up all the profits? I would love to tell you that as time went by, it's like, okay, I'm so tired of fruit dipped in chocolate. The truth is my ritual, I'd come into the store, look around, make sure things are good, go into the walk-in cooler, and then make some regrettable choices. So chocolate-covered banana wedges, chocolate-covered apples, sometimes just the chocolates. I forget the fruit. So I'm not sure it was the best thing to have in my life at the time in that regard. But hopefully I didn't eat so much that it had meaningful difference on my P&Ls.
Absolutely. So how did you come to choose edible arrangements as your, you had 2 franchise locations for 10 years. One was the top one in the country, I think, there in LA.
The top in California, there were about 110 stores at the time, and every week rankings changed, but we typically were in the top 5 or 10. Very often, that first location was number 1. So we were very, very proud of that. As far as how I got into it, it's a bit of a cautionary tale. It really worked out for me, but I would never recommend that anybody follow my path. I had already been doing 14 years of professional motivational speaking full time by the time I got into that. But I wanted another stream of income because my wife and I were starting a family, didn't want to travel so much. And I wanted some more real world experience about the things I was talking about on stage, about leadership and customer service. And so I saw an airline magazine ad for edible arrangements and thought, wow, that looked cool. And I liked that it was a franchise. They could just quickly teach me the system. So I flew to Connecticut and had the meeting and began the process. I never even looked at other franchise brands. I just thought, this is cool. I'm going to do it. I'm sort of a doer. I'm pretty decisive. Sometimes that gets me into trouble. In this particular case, it worked out very well for me. So I would not recommend it, but that's what happened for me.
Yeah. So you looked in a magazine and said, I want that, and went from there.
Yeah, I thought, hey, I think that could do well in Los Angeles. And it turns out I was right, but I wouldn't say it was a data-based decision.
I know. Well, people on the outside looking in, right? They think, oh, these are proactive decisions. You did assessments and market studies and things like that. No, you looked in an airline magazine and said, I'll do that.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting is, I have a lot of people who come to me wanting advice on franchising. And there's some people, they want all the data and the analysis and they want to crunch the nut, which I think to a point that's really, really important. I wish I did more of that. I recommend doing that. But I see some people that do so much of it, they never pull the trigger. You're
Yeah.
never going to have enough data that says this is absolutely going to work. You're absolutely going to make a profit. At some point, it is an emotional gut-based decision,
Hmm.
as is any investment, where you have to take a chance. And so I think we need to make data-based decisions, but at some point, we need to be willing to trust and take a risk and bet on ourselves.
Yeah, a data informed decision as opposed to strictly
Yeah.
looking for all the data. Because ultimately we make decisions emotively and then backfill cognitively, right? This felt right or this seemed right, and I can't control for all the market conditions. So then we backfill intellectually. Well, it's going to make this amount in this time and those kinds of things.
Well, and I would add this, a lot of times the people who are like, they're just all about the data and all about the numbers. I mean, that's really great because I do think we need to manage our businesses based on data and numbers and reports. But a lot of those people are so focused on that they're not really good or they don't focus on the human side of the business. Like, how do
Hmm.
you really engage your employees? How do you delight your customers? Not with a pro forma, right? Not with a calculator. Like that requires using a very different part of the brain, right? The numbers is the prefrontal cortex, but the emotional human social part is the middle brain. And we need to, access that part of the brain as well, because these create the experiences that retain employees and turn customers into repeat customers.
Yeah.
So we need to be able to do both to succeed in these businesses.
Yeah, that's one of I think it's changing, and you tell me what you think, but that's one of the knocks against soft skills, although my friend Lindsay Dowd is on a mission to call them power skills, and that is to pay so much attention to the data-driven side and forget these are people who are coming into our store to buy. These are people who are doing the work, greeting these customers. These are people who are putting together these edible arrangements or widgets or whatever it is they're putting together. And so taking that same, can I say, strategic and proactive approach to those assets as we do the nuts and bolts that fit on the pro forma.
Yeah, look, every business is the people business, and human beings, unlike AI or robots or computers, we're driven more by emotion than anything else. I mean, the World Series just finished up yesterday. I'm a Dodgers fan. I looked into getting tickets and I saw how much they were. I'm like, whoa, that's probably too much that I want to spend, but people are willing to spend it. It's an emotional decision, and what they got for spending that money, it's not just being to watching baseball; it's about experiencing it, about the emotion that you get from being there that I wasn't getting from being on my couch watching the game. We are emotionally driven beings. And so we need to be able to be aware of that, manage that in ourselves, and tap into it in others if we really want them to give to our business, whether they're giving their work or whether they're giving their money.
It's fascinating you should say that because it seems like there's this tug of war, right? I think the human side of the business is starting to right the ship a little bit in the lean towards the performer side. But case in point, the conversation between the cognitive and the emotive. In the World Series, Yankee Stadium, it was probably Freddie Freeman because he hit so many home runs, right? In fact, it was Freddie Freeman. I remember the article. He hit one into out into right field, right center field. And the Yankee fan, of course, it's a tradition in Yankee Stadium, anytime a home run ball is hit, to throw it back by the opposing team, throw it back out onto the field. So here this guy's holding what I think was the sixth World Series home run ball by Freddie Freeman in this series, right? Which was worth minimum six figures, right? Probably deep into six figures, maybe more. Some rabid fan wanted it, right? Those Dodger fans. so, so the guy instinctively throws it back out onto the field. And so the interviewer was asking him, dude, this was worth all this money. Why'd you just throw it back on the field? And he gave a totally emotive response. He said the Yanks needed to refocus and move forward and win the game. And so I just put it back out there and the crowd loved it. And we searched, and I think that was actually the one game they won. We're in this tug of war between the cognitive and the emotive. When it comes to paying attention to that balance and attracting top talent, how have you seen that done best, Scott? Or better ask, how did you do it best?
I often see it done poorly more often than I see it done at best. I mean, really by the definition, when you're the best, you're kind of part of this minority of people, right?
Right, an outlier.
So what I have come to learn in the war for workers, that in there are times where everyone's desperate for employees, everyone is always desperate for great employees. So everything we do to outreach to attract them is sales and marketing, as much as it is when we're trying to acquire new customers. So all the rules that apply for marketing apply to marketing to customers, apply when marketing for talent. So we need to tell stories. We need to tap into people's emotions. When you see an ad or a commercial, very rarely is it just telling us what the product is and what its benefits are, right? It's telling us a story. It's trying to get us to feel something. That is exactly what we need to do when crafting help wanted posts, that we need to tap into people's emotions and give them a sense of not just what the job is and what they get, but what the environment is and how they're going to feel. Paint a picture of what you're going to feel if you come and work for us. And obviously make it wonderful and make it great. And you can still state the requirements. In one of my books, I actually publish 2 different help wanted ads that I found on the same website on the same day for the same jobs for dishwasher. And one of them just says, here are the requirements, here's the job, that sort of thing. But the other one paints a picture of this beautiful environment and how you're going to be part of our family. And we're going to celebrate you, the lively, quirky, individual you, because we know that creates a great experience for everyone. And most people would accept less money to work in that place than they would for the other place that pays more but doesn't feel so great. We want to tap into people's emotions because people respond more to their feelings than what they're going to get. And so I think that when we do that, we're going to get a lot more phone calls. A lot more people are going to reach out thinking, wow, I would love to feel that, compared to just, I would love to do that work. So we need to be more deliberate about that. I mean, again, and that first one is how most help wanted posts are. Here's the job. Here's what your requirements. In fact, the one that I use, it used the word must 4 times.
Wow.
You must have your own transportation. You must be available. I'm thinking, can you imagine running an ad like that for customers? Wanted customer, must have working credit card. You would never run that ad, right? But
I hope not.
yeah, but that's how a lot of help wanted posts are. So we need to be more deliberate about, again, tapping into that human side, in this case, the human side of the potential workers that we want to recruit.
It seems to me, Scott, that we've got to get in touch with our own humanity before we can make that transition. For instance, when you tell me that a help wanted ad had the word must in it 4 times, I can immediately tell you whoever wrote that ad had hired somebody that didn't have their own transportation or lost their own transportation, right? And we're just unaware of it, but it's always someone else's fault. I'm blaming we can't find good workers these days and that kind of stuff, rather than the culture, the positive work culture. What is it that makes this a desirable place to work? Why do people stay? So let's talk about people staying for just a moment. What are some of the keys that you've discovered, Scott, to retaining those top talent once you get them on a team?
It's a bit more of kind of what we've been talking about. People might come because they need a job, because they have the income, but they stay because of or they leave because of how the business makes them feel. And every business has a culture, the best by design, most by default, right? And culture is not about how good we are to people. That has nothing to do with culture. It can contribute to it, but that's not what culture is. Culture refers to our way of doing things. What are our social norms? How do we interact here compared to that group over there? Whether it's a marriage, a family, a religion, a country, a prison block, every group has their ways of doing things. If you go to a restaurant here in the United States, how long would you typically spend at a restaurant? You sit down at a table, how long are you there, would you say, on average?
It depends on who I'm there with and why. If it's a business lunch, I'm in and out pretty quickly. But if I'm with my wife and it's a date night or a special occasion or something like that, man, I'd love to linger, say a couple hours, just enjoying the conversation and the ambiance.
Okay, a couple hours. So yeah, I would say that usually most of the time it's maybe an hour, hour and a half, and maybe it's something really special, maybe 2 hours.
Yeah.
So I was in Prague last month with my mom and my brother. And we go to a restaurant, they were busy. And it was like, it wasn't this romantic place. It was like beer and casual food, that kind of thing. And they were crowded. And they said, all right, we have a table for you, but we have a reservation for it. So you can only stay for 2.5 hours. To them, 2.5 hours was a rushed meal. That's because a long meal is their way of doing things compared to how we do it in the US. In the US, they bring us our check. They want to turn the table. We expect it. I don't
Yeah.
want to wait for a check. And when you're in Europe, it's like, would you please just bring me the check? I have a museum to get to. Um, so everybody has their way of doing things. And so we
Mm,
want to create a way of doing things that feels great, where we
mm,
feel everybody feels included, where they feel important.
mm.
Um, and that other people share those feelings with them. And
Yeah.
so we need to be very deliberate about creating it. And it takes a lot more than buying people pizza and gift cards and saying happy birthday on their birthday. We need to
Mm,
establish, hey, this is our mission. This is why we're doing it. And these are our values. This is what we care about. These are our ways of doing things. And then reinforce that every single day.
yeah. And so there's a connectedness between that attraction factor and the retention factor. And we want there to be consistency there. That's why I really like the word attraction, because it means you're deliberately working, or to use your word, intentionally working on creating a culture where people want to stay, look forward to Monday as much as they do Friday, and really giving their best. They're fully engaged, as opposed to recruiting, which sounds like I'm trying to sell you right on coming here, date you hard, get you there, and then drop you off on the side of the road. So
I,
there's
I
that
love that.
consistency.
I love that distinction, right? Because if it's recruiting, it's like, okay, what do I have to do to get you? But if I'm trying to attract you, then what it means is it's more of a focus on myself, that I
Mm,
need to be attractive. I need to
yes.
create a workplace that has something magnetic about it.
Mm,
So I like that because it's us taking responsibility to level up, to be the best workplace that we can
right,
be.
right.
And then communicate that. So that's a great way of looking at it.
And some intentionality behind that. What were some of the things you did when you had that edible arrangements franchise? Well, actually, two of them, because you took one that was a low performing store and converted it into a high performing store. What were some things you did to really not just retain, but to, can I say, continue to attract? Because it's like you're continuing to date once you're married, right? Continuing to attract those team members. What were some of the things that you did?
We were very big on the people side of the business. For me, the goal was to build the business through a great customer experience. I was never really great at marketing. I didn't have the patience for it, didn't want to spend the money. I think people should be patient and should spend the money, but I didn't want to.
Yeah.
But I knew that if we could provide an exceptional customer experience, we would convert our customers into spokespeople,
Oh,
and we would convert them into repeat customers, people who
mm,
remember us, talk about us, and want to come back.
mm,
But I also knew the only way to create a great customer experience is by creating a great employee experience. That
mm,
if they're happy, if they're enthusiastic, they then are going to be positioned to extend that to our guests, to our customers. So we were very deliberate about that. So, part of that meant recruiting the best people we could. And then part of it meant that we would have various rituals and practices and meetings that were all about who are we, right? Why do we matter,
mm,
right? And so we would have, rituals, even things like, once a month we'd have one meeting, and one of the rituals was we'd go around a circle, we'd spend 5 minutes focusing on each employee, and everybody would tell them why they appreciate them, what they like about them, love about them, why they're great, and how they contribute. So for 5 minutes, that employee is just standing there being pummeled with love and recognition and appreciation. A lot of these people weren't getting this anywhere else in their lives, and
mm.
they'd be crying. I had one employee, she'd punch out and she'd stick around because she said, "This is my sanctuary."
Oh, wow.
And so for us, it was important to create that kind of environment where I wanted to create a store when anybody walked in, whether it is a guest, customer, whether it's an employee, whether it's a delivery person bringing us, supplies, that when somebody walked in, they felt better. And when they left, their emotions were elevated. So we
Mm.
made that very deliberate, and it took work, and we got busy. It was hard to do, but we committed to it, and it paid off in spades because we had great retention, and it led to great customer experience, and that led to more sales.
And where do you get pummeled by accolades? I mean, that's just such a foreign concept to most people to think I go to work and I get pummeled by accolades once a month. I mean, who does that? How'd you come up with that, Scott?
I have too much time on my hands, so I sit around and think. Um, Yeah, I just think about what do people appreciate? And I've done my research because I surveyed my employees and I saw how important recognition was to them. And
Yeah.
recognition from me, of course, is important, but recognition from each other, I wanted their loyalty to be more to each other even than to me, because that
Mm,
culture is so important, right?
mm,
I wanted to make sure that when they were tempted to go work at other places that are paying another couple dollars per hour, I wanted them to know what it was and who it was that they'd be leaving.
ah,
And so part of it was a defensive. I wanted to be a great place to be
mm,
so that when others would snoop around and try to poach or try to offer more money, people
mhm.
knew, well, it's going to be a big sacrifice to leave because here you are part of a family that's got your back. I made that a priority, and that investment paid off so much. And here's the thing. We all know that customers will pay more for a premium experience. We
Mhm.
all do it. Employees will accept less for a premium work experience. Not that I believe we
Mhm.
should pay employees less. I paid my employees fairly, sometimes quite well.
Mhm.
That's not what got them to stay. What got them to stay was the experience they got. Just like our customers became repeat customers,
Mhm.
not just because they got a nice fruit basket or what that kind of thing, but because of what it felt like when being with us. So that was a
Right.
priority.
Yeah. So you really put your finger on the pulse of something that's so important. That is the recognition that they're tangible and intangible paychecks. Sure, the tangible paychecks are the money, right? And you know you're going to get paid a living wage. Intangible paychecks are the kinds of things that you're talking about, the accolades, the recognition, the just unique experience that you have as an employee because you are you, that openness, that acceptance, that love, that respect. Those, again, don't show up on a pro forma, but they just keep people coming back day after day to give their best. Because again, who does that and where do you get that?
Yeah, and to me, I mean, most people agree that we're all driven by emotion. So
Mhm.
let's just work to make people feel good. It's just
Yeah,
smart business.
it's a matter of emotional intelligence and placing that alongside intellectual intelligence, if you will, that reads those data points and
Yeah.
loves those so much. Scott Greenberg is my guest on this episode of the Work Positive Podcast. Hey, Work Positive Nation, go down, and I know you want to talk to Scott personally as well to hear more of his story. We're going to get to that in just a moment, but go down and click on that LinkedIn profile that's in the show notes. You can go right over there, connect with him. He's very approachable, as you can tell. Send him a message, interact with him there. And also in the show notes, you'll find a couple of his books, and we're going to talk more about this later, but you've got links to his books on Amazon, The Wealthy Franchisee, and then Stop the Shift Show. I want to talk about that one if we can, Scott. Stop the Shift Show. I have to stop talking quickly, which is not too hard for me as a Southerner, right? To
I'm
say.
like the one author who really does want people to mispronounce the title of his book, just for the laugh. I'm the only one who wants that. But you got it right, unfortunately.
I know, I blew the marketing strategy right there, didn't I? Stop the Shift Show. What's that book all about? Where'd you get the title? That's what I want to know.
Well, the specific title came to me on an airplane after kicking around some other titles that were fine but didn't jump out as much. When you talk to a lot of employers who have hourly employees, in the book, the full title is "Stop the Shift Show: Turn Your Struggling Hourly Workers into a Top Performing Team." So it's all about how to manage hourly workers. And most business owners I talk to who oversee hourly workers describe it as a show because it's really difficult. And what I came to find out is, and I knew this from, spending all these years studying leadership, there's a billion books and resources and gurus out there who focus on management and leadership.
Hmm.
But hourly workers, which are the largest segment of the labor pool, are
Wow.
completely different than those on salary,
Mm.
right? Just like, there's different sectors of the marketplace that we're trying to sell to. You wouldn't use the same marketing or offer the same products and services to everyone. You focus on certain groups. You can't have these broad, general management tactics and expect they're going to work for everyone. And most bosses really struggle with hourly workers, often because the bosses themselves know nothing about how to manage people, maybe the system, not people, or they've managed people in a white collar salary setting
Yeah.
where the workers are completely different.
Mm.
So it's a mess out there. It always has been. And the temptation is to blame the workers themselves. They're lazy, they're entitled,
Mm.
they're thin-skinned, they're addicted to their phones, these things that we always say, kids these days. And
Yeah.
not that those things don't play in, but how about managers these days? How about
Mm.
managers always, right?
Mm.
And I learned that the average person who's put in a management position leads people for 10 years before ever getting any formal training on managing people. So
Oh,
most people manage
that's a
the way they
travesty.
were managed,
Yep.
passing on this legacy of, and a lot of people become managers because they're really competent employees. So
Hmm.
they get promoted, but they're not taught on how to influence people, how to build culture,
Hmm.
how to motivate, right? They're not taught these things. And so it's a mess. It is what I call a shift show.
Hmm.
So my objective now is to offer the solution to that, to teach people how to bring out the best in this group. And that is what the book is about.
That's definitely a challenge. So, talk to us about the 30-second transformation technique that you've got trademarked that I think shows up in that book.
Yeah, I mentioned it in the first book, The Wealthy Franchisee, which
Hmm.
is a book about successful franchise business owners and what makes the best different from everyone else. I mentioned it there. I take a deep dive in Stop the Shift Show. So this is a coaching methodology that I co-created with a colleague of mine, where we show managers and business owners how to diagnose employees for a specific task, and then based on their diagnosis, determine what is the best approach to coaching them. So different situations call for different kinds of management. In some cases, the issue is their attitude. In some cases, it's their aptitude. In some cases, it's a hard skills thing. In some cases, it's a soft skills thing.
Hmm.
Often it's a combination. And then we have our people, we also call them superstars because they're great, but most of those superstars aren't great at everything. So for
Hmm.
tasks where they excel, they need certain kind of coaching. But the places where they struggle, we have to coach them differently. So this is a very simple but powerful approach for making that diagnosis. And then I have this color model that people can use to determine for that task what is the best approach to coaching them. And there are other models that are out there, situational leadership, that are similar, right? You're focusing on hard skills and soft skills and
Hmm.
coaching accordingly. But we have simplified it. We have some meaningful differences there. And we created it thinking of a 19-year-old assistant manager at a frozen yogurt shop. We
Hmm.
wanted that person to be able to use this model. So it's
Hmm.
very simple, but incredibly powerful.
Mm-mm. So, how do you go from the diagnosis, to use your word, to the coaching action and activity?
Well, we use the word diagnosis purposely because we compare it to a doctor.
Mm-hmm.
A doctor, a good doctor, when they'll notice a symptom, but before they take action, they have to do an examination and ask questions to figure out what is the reason for the symptom. That is the diagnosis. Then once they know the diagnosis, there's a corresponding treatment. It might be surgery, it might be a prescription, whatever it's going to be. So the model that we share, it's like once you have the diagnosis, once you know what it is, and there's four possible diagnoses,
Okay.
each one there's a corresponding approach to coaching. So, you do it instantly. And we call it
Mm.
30-second leadership because within 30 seconds, you should be able to make your diagnosis and know how to approach it. We describe it not as a solution for all employee issues, but
Mhm.
it's a really great tool. It's
Mm.
almost like it's not like Google Maps where it's like exact steps to get from where you are to the front door of where you're going, but it's a really good compass to narrow down the possibilities to give you a better sense of how to lead that person for that task.
I love it. It's simple yet profound because it heads you up and in the right direction to help empower and equip that person to overcome whatever deficiency there is and to become a more effective employee.
Yeah. And the main thing that look, I'm an author, but the main thing I do is public speaking. So I'm brought into keynote conferences and do trainings and teach workshops.
Right.
Other than my keynotes, my most requested training, my most requested program is 30-second leadership. Because what people like about it is, you talk about culture and that kind of thing, but it's still a little bit kind of nebulous, super important,
Yeah.
but still nebulous. This is a hard skills coaching tool. It's a
Mm.
how-to methodology, and people really like that because there's an immediate takeaway that people can implement, and it instantly makes them a better manager.
Mm. I love it. Instantly makes them a better manager because, as you indicated earlier, most managers get promoted up the chain because they're really good at whatever it is they do, building a widget or crafting a widget or whatever it is. But did you say 10 years before they get any training in how to influence people?
Yeah,
Wow.
if they ever get it at all.
Yeah.
And a lot of
Big
people like
number.
look, they get promoted, and so then they learn the systems, like how to manage the restaurant, how to manage the office.
Hmm.
But as far as managing the people, we kind of take that for granted. It
We
just doesn't
do.
happen a whole lot.
That's huge.
And or the training they get, again, it's that broad stuff from the typical books and gurus we've all heard of who are brilliant minds, but
Mm,
they're not specializing in this one area
mm,
that is just so different than people are earning salary or in a white collar setting.
mm, mm,
So it's sort of a specialized type of leadership for this group, but it just so happens that this group is the majority of the American workforce.
mm. Yeah, and we don't stop, well, at least I didn't until you just said that. We don't stop and count that up, that hourly shift workers constitute the largest employee base in the U.S.
Yeah, I keynoted a franchise industry conference recently. And everybody in the audience were some suppliers, but mostly franchisors. The people are sort of at the top of the pyramid of franchise organization, right? And in the US, there's maybe 4,000 franchise brands. There's about 800,000 franchise businesses. The majority of whom are owned by multi-unit groups. So the actual number of franchise owners is small. It's a bit smaller, but so there's a few 100,000 franchise business owners. But the franchise industry, which is an industry made up of many industries, employs more than 8 million workers, most of whom are hourly workers.
Mm,
Right. But there isn't a whole lot of focus on what can we do for those people? How can
mm,
we identify and meet their needs?
mm.
It doesn't happen. And so again, I'm trying to present myself with, as someone who's offering solutions to that.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Scott Greenberg is my guest on this episode of the Work Positive Podcast. Scott, when we go to scottgreenberg.com, what are we going to find?
So you'll find plenty of information on the services that I provide. So information about my keynote presentations, my workshops and trainings, information about my book, about my background. I mean, it's focused on me because I'm the resource there that's being offered. Testimonials, that sort of thing. But there's also lots of videos, some of which are promotional, but a lot of them are informational. I have a blog and links to the various articles. I do a lot of writing and published in a number of different places. And so all that content is there as well. For me, most important, there's a contact form where you can reach out if you're interested in using any of my services. So if there's anybody here who's watching or listening or knows anyone who could benefit from what I offer, I certainly would appreciate you going to that form and letting us know.
Yeah, and you can catch up on the blog and things like that through your LinkedIn profile, which we've got the URL for down there. So be sure to click on that and go there. And then we also have links to the Wealthy Franchisee. You mentioned that the 30-second leadership tool is mentioned in that book. What do we find in the Wealthy Franchisee?
The Wealthy Franchisee is all about top franchisees from a variety of different franchise industries. And that includes everything from, restaurants to retail to hospitality, senior in-home care, killing mosquitoes. It's shocking how many different industries are part of franchising. And I've worked with all these industries speaking and that sort of thing. And I've interviewed so many franchise business owners and I've met the top people and all these brands. The book is about what they have in common and what everybody else can replicate to be just like them. And the good news is the things that really make them special, that really drive their sales and profitability, make them great, are all things that we can replicate. It's not that they just have great locations or they were born super smart. It's some characteristics and behaviors that are replicable. So I profile various franchise business owners and interview them and talk about what makes them great. And then I have all these different chapters. And because the way I got into this is franchise brands bring me in to speak. And I ask them, hey, how are franchisees getting in their own way? If they could, change, what would that be? And so I know what the issues are. So this book is in service of the franchise business owner so they can find out what they can do, how they need to think, and who they need to be in order to align themselves with the top people who are making all this money.
And those characteristics and qualities cross-pollinate into non-franchise business owners and HR leaders and others, and those are qualities that we want in our work lives as well.
Yeah.
Scott Greenberg, Work Positive Nation always wants to know from my guest, what one thing? So Scott Greenberg, what's your one thing you would suggest Work Positive Nation do starting today to create the kind of positive work culture we're talking about?
Whatever business you're in, use it to improve the lives of everyone it touches. Yes, through your products and services, but mostly through your interactions, right? Make sure that your customers leave happier. Make sure that your employees feel a sense of belonging, feel personal growth, and that their emotions are elevated. Use the business to just improve people's lives, especially their emotions, even though you're busy, even though they may not be coming to you and saying, hi, I'd like a cheeseburger, fries, and some optimism. Like, they're not going to say that, right? But intuitively, we need to understand that everybody's chasing experiences that make them feel better. So make that part of your mission. Make people feel better. And I promise it's going to impact your financial bottom line.
Scott Greenberg, you're amazing. Thank you so much. I'm honored to have you on the Work Positive podcast. I'm better for this conversation, and I know Work Positive Nation is too. Thank you, my friend.
Such a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Work Positive podcast. Please share this podcast with your friends who are HR and small business leaders so they can do one thing today to create a positive work culture that increases productivity and profits. I'd like to give you a free Work Positive course just for listening. It's called Something to Talk About, and it's transformed the work conversations of so many people all over the world. Get your free copy when you go to workpositive.today/something to talk about, and you can start transforming your conversations today. Remember, it pays to work positive.